Hello all, welcome back to our Data Karma YouTube channel. In our previous videos, we began exploring about Excel functions. Now we are taking it a step further by delving into three specific functions: average, average if, and average ifs. In this video, we will examine each function in detail and explore their specific use case. Now let's learn about the average function. It is a basic mathematical function that calculates the average of a range of numbers. It simply adds up all the numbers in the range specified and divides that sum by the count of numbers. Just like the count and sum functions, even average function does not take empty cells, cells containing text, logical values, errors, or non-numeric data into consideration for performing the average operation. As far as the syntax goes, we just have to write equals to average of number 1, comma number 2, comma so on and so forth. These number 1 and number 2 are basically the arguments, which can be numbers, cell references, or ranges that we want to include in the average calculation. We can include up to 255 arguments. Now let us see a real-time use case as to how we can use this average function within an Excel workbook. For example, let's consider 5 students and the scores they have got in the math subject, and we will try to find an average of those 5 students' scores, and then we will come to a conclusion. As for my data goes, let's say my first column is the student name and score in math. Let's say my first student is George, second is Charles, Kevin, Michael, and let's say Larry. Let's say George has scored 85 in his math exam and Charles scored 90, Kevin scored 75, Michael scored 88, and Larry scored 92. Okay, now let us find the average of those 5 scores in math of 5 students, and by using the average function. Let's use the average function, average of, and just like the way I explained number 1 comma number 2, you can also use a reference value of a cell or a range of cells together. Because the records I have, the 5 records, those are one below the other, we can use a range of cells. The range would be B2 to B6. Close the bracket. There you go. 86 is the average of the 5 students who attended the math exam and scored good points within the math exam. Next up, we have the average if function. Just as the name says, average if, which means average only if it meets a particular condition. It is used to calculate the average of a range of cells that meet a specific condition or a criteria. It allows us to specify a condition, and Excel will only include the numbers that meet that condition in the average calculation. As per the syntax, we write it as equals to average if within the arguments range, criteria, and then the average range. For range, it is basically the range of cells for which we want to apply the criteria. And then the criteria, it's the condition which we want to use to determine which cells to be counted or averaged. And then the average range. This is an optional argument when there is a specific case where we want to only take few of the cells within the range for calculating the average, then we specify the average range. And if we don't specify this average range, then Excel automatically takes the range for averaging. Now let us do a real-time example for the average if function. We will use the same data which we have used for the average function example, the 5 students and their scores in the math subject. Uh, for this average if, let us assume that we have a condition where we only want to average if the score is greater than 85, right? Okay, just as the way we have discussed the syntax, we will use the same syntax here in computing the average for the scores which are greater than 85. Average of students above 85 equals to average if of, let's select B2 to B6, comma, and let us give a condition saying greater than 85. There you go. The answer is 90. So for anything above 85, we will include this record for Charles, Michael, and Larry. So these three are the ones which we are averaging, and obviously you can see 90 plus 88 plus 92 divided by 3 is 90. So this is how you would use average if condition. Whenever there is a particular condition you have for which you want to use the average. Now for the average ifs function, this is basically an extension to the average if function, and the only difference is we could give more than one condition, and only those cells would be considered within the range to calculate the average. This is useful when we need to apply several conditions simultaneously, just as the way I said. As per the syntax goes, we just need to write equal to average ifs. Within the arguments, specify the average range, the range of cells that we want to average, criteria range 1 and criteria range 2. These are the ranges of cells that you want to evaluate based on the corresponding criteria, and criteria 1, criteria 2, and so on. These are the conditions that you want to apply to the respective criteria ranges. Okay, now let us do a small example, just like the way we have done for average and average if. Uh, we typically are using the same data, but I added another dimension called the department. I'm basically tagging each and every student to a particular department, and they already have their scores within the math test. So let us assume that we have a double condition saying we want average of all the students who has scored more than 85. At the same time, we are only considering the department to be physics. Now let us see how we could do the average ifs. Well, for physics department and students scoring more than 85. The calculation goes like, let's say average ifs, then we specify the average range. The average range is C2 to C6. We'll say comma. The criteria range 1, as I said, the first condition is the department has to be physics. So let us say, give this thing P2 to B6, and then we specify within the quotations, say physics, and then criteria range 2 would be the score should be greater than 85. The criteria range 2 would be C2 to C6 again, and then just like the previous times, I'll just do greater than 85. There you go. I'm seeing 89 as the average. Let us just check. My condition is the students should be from the physics department out of these three records, because the score is under 85. Only this 90 and 88 are considered, and obviously 80 and 88 and 90, the average of those two numbers put together is 89. That is how we will have to use average ifs function on our Excel data set. Thank you for watching till the end. If you like our content, please support us by liking this video and subscribing to Data Karma YouTube channel, a one-stop solution to all your data questions.